What is going on, guys? Welcome back. Ryan Moody, Jimmy Smith, our MMA show. I did a live breakdown on the podcast. Jimmy did a taped? That doesn't make sense. Jimmy recorded one for YouTube. You haven't listened to the podcast, and I haven't seen your YouTube clip, right?
We're flying blind.
We are flying blind, and we're using the old honor system as to what we did. I called the card differently than it actually aired, which has been a theme for us.
Yeah,
Did you do
seriously.
the same? Yeah, very good. I love this shit where, everything's different. So we start off, Julian Erosa comes back, looks actually really good from, I'm trying to think what you would describe that as. I mean, that I guess there's no other way to put it. That's coming back from being cut. Comes in, gets Sean Woodson, who was undefeated at the time, gets him in a Darce choke. They have a really good back and forth battle. I always feel bad for the guy on the other side of that. The guy that's coming back to the UFC with the hunger that's maybe not seen quite yet the regional circuit again, but knows he's going to, with the crowds that are not full when they're allowed to be there and the paychecks that are an eighth of what they're getting paid. So I feel like Sean Woodson got the short end of this one. But Julian Erosa, you can't take anything away from him. Catch weight at 150. Did what he had to do and walked away with a win. Undefeated opponents matter, especially in the UFC, even if it is their debut.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting for Woodson, and I tweeted this, and a lot of people thought it was funny. Like, he's one of the most oddly proportioned fighters I've ever seen in my life. Like, really skinny legs and long arms with like a big head, and he's just awkward, and he fights very awkward. And I thought in the beginning, Erosa was just having trouble dealing with it, the way a lot of people have trouble dealing with it. And then gets knocked down, gets put on his butt, and then comes back and wins via guillotine. And Sean Woodson is about 6'2". Julian Erosa is 6'1". They're both very, very tall for the weight class. And once guys like that guillotine you, and it's obviously it was a Darce choke, modified guillotine, it's a nightmare. It's an absolute nightmare. As soon as Woodson got caught, I was like, oh, this just went south. So right into the Darce choke. Good job for Julian Erosa. Took it on late notice. UFC always appreciates that and got out with the win. But step back for Sean Woodson. Not the end of the world, but two exciting guys, I think, in the division.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, both guys, one obviously rebuilding the other and has to kind of start back over because you kind of get that UFC setback. And I'm sure those thoughts creep up of, do I belong here? Which are tough to deal with. Moving up, another thing tough to deal with, almost immediate knockouts. Takeshi Sato, Jason Witt. To me, I really thought this was going to be a different fight because we looked at Sato before and he's struggled a little bit against higher level talent. Bilal Muhammad, you can go back and listen to how we called that fight. What do you take from fights like this? I mean, I can't take much win or loss, right? I mean, less than a minute. What do you do? Back to just forget it never happened for the loser and move forward?
Exactly. You got clipped, got hurt 48 seconds into the first round. Yeah, what are you going to do? It's one of those that doesn't really teach us a whole lot. Takeshi Sato, of course, has decent power. He always has. He has a few first round knockouts on his record back in the Pancrase days. And that's kind of the issue. We didn't learn anything we didn't already know. He can always put you down and put you out. He's a big guy at 170, very, very strong. We haven't seen what his whole game can do. We didn't see any adjustments against Jason Witt. Knocked him down, put him down, great finishing instincts, things we knew he had. He just kind of confirmed that. But jumping up to the main card on late notice, a lot of people, even I know there's no crowd, but still that's some pressure for some people. And he handled it well and big step forward for him.
We also saw middleweight Brendan Allen pick up the win. Now, you went against Brendan Allen. I didn't, so I do recall this is at least where we're getting continuity in our cards. What was the reason you went against Brendan Allen?
I went with Brendan Allen on this one. I picked Brendan Allen.
Then we both came out winners. Look at that.
Yeah. I just thought he had a little bit more experience in the UFC. I mean, it's pretty simple. They're built pretty similarly. Stylistically, they're not that different. I just thought he'd have a little bit more confidence, a bit more comfort heading into the fight, having been there before. And he's quietly put together a 3-fight winning streak, which I think is important. My day job essentially for ESPN International, I did a hit obviously on Monday after this fight, and I was asked, who took the biggest step forward other than Dustin Poirier, and I said I thought Allen. He's quietly put three together, two of them finishes. Called out Ian Heinisch, who I think is a great call out because that's the guy you want, fringe top 15 guy, dangerous, athletic. If you beat him, it sends a message. And also, Ian Heinisch has a lot of main card experience. So that having that name on your belt means a whole lot. So I thought it was a good call out, good performance, gutsy. A lot of criticism about the one judge who somehow took the third round away from Dawkins, even though Dawkins was on top like 3.5, 4 minutes in the third round. It made no sense at all. So fortunately, the right guy won. But step forward, a big one by Brendan Allen. I really liked his performance. And without, a potential fight of the year in the main event, that could have been fight of the night.
Agree completely. Moving up, Maurice Green, who I picked against Cain Vellante. Listen, I thought Vellante would be able to use a little bit more movement, a little bit more cardio. I honestly thought he was getting along in the fight relatively well, but falls into I will say, I feel like, and this could be my bias, I feel like I was going to give him the win going into this, but in the last minutes, he gets caught in this really strange arm triangle that looked like partially exhaustion was at play. He was on top when this happened. Just a really weird sequence of events. Is this the one where Buffer announced it wrong? As if it wasn't? I'm trying to think. One of these Buffer announced as a decision when it was a stoppage, and I think this might have been it.
I don't listen with the audio on, so I don't know what was said.
You don't have to listen. Twitter tells you anytime someone screws up. Trust me.
I should have paid attention to that one. Yes. It was just such a John Vellante fight. Like, it was awkward. He had a good leg kick. He moved forward just enough, but really, God, how do I put it? Like, neither guy could really get their game going. There weren't a ton of combinations. He was just doing, as you said, a little bit more than Maurice Green. I thought he was winning the fight. Actually dropped him right before he got submitted. It seemed like everything was going his way, and he lands in an arm triangle from the bottom in half guard, which is like, what? Like, who gets caught in that? And I think the thing is that he was just facing a guy who was 6'7", much longer arms, a lot bigger, and the guy was able to crank it out of him. That was pretty much it. I don't think this happens to him at 205. I don't think this happens to him if he were a stronger heavyweight. I think he just fell into a submission that you have to be a lot longer and bigger to pull off. And that's exactly what happened. So it wasn't like it's the sweetest technique in the world. I can't imagine any top-level guy getting caught in that. And that's the kind of thing where every now and then if you have somebody in the gym who's really good at these kind of goofy chokes from weird positions, you tap, you're like, you feel like an idiot. I'm sure John Vellante is kicking himself all week about falling into that submission and tapping to it. But I think it's a matter of the guy was just bigger and had longer arms and was able to pull it off. But bad decision late in a fight, and is kind of, once again, the most John Vellante thing ever.
Well, it's funny you say that because a lot of times when we use that terminology, it's the most Bellator thing ever. But the reality is when you look back at where he is, he's lost to journeyman talent. We'll say, Sam Alvey, Patrick Cummings. You throw this in the mix. I like the Crochet Boss, but hey, listen, he's not setting the world on fire as a contender. This was a step up to another division. Certainly didn't prove himself. Certainly looked like he was going to be capable of winning from an athletic and experience standpoint. But I'm not, raring to go to see another Vellante heavyweight match. Where do you think this ultimately ends up in the scheme of his career? Because if we haven't started to go over this slow slope, we're rapidly approaching it. And things are just, it's not just, to your point, it's not just things that are out of the ordinary that keep happening. There's a lot of bad things happening. Decision losses, body shot losses, knockouts, things are starting to mount in the negative direction here.
That's the crazy thing, is this is a guy who never really made his mark at 205. He lost to a bunch of middling talent. I remember when he fought Shogun Rua. That was supposed to be his big name step up. If he can beat Shogun Rua, he's, it might launch him a bit. And it just never got going. And lost to Smiling Sam Alvey in the fight. I called another really boring fight. He couldn't really get anything going. A lot of decisions. He tends to go the distance a lot. This guy without a lot of momentum who hit a huge road bump. And that means you usually stop. I just don't see his UFC career progressing past this point. I know it's hard to fill the ranks when it comes to heavyweight and 205. But, man, John Vellante is really asking a lot. This guy hasn't had a 2-fight win streak since 2014-15. I think it was Corey Anderson. He won two in a row at the expense of Corey Anderson. And since then, he hasn't won 2 in a row. It's just he's been hanging around, but not doing enough, I think, to justify his spot in the UFC.
Yeah, I he's a great guy. Met him a few times, but yeah. I agree. It's to the point where I like him enough. I don't want to see the continued damage that's happening here. So we move forward. Co-main event. Mike Perry, Mickey Gall. A lot of people, apparently, not me, I don't know what this was like, we're going against Mike Perry. I've listened to a lot of Mike Perry interviews before and after this, putting myself down the rabbit hole of trying to understand his mindset. But to a point, I agree with a lot of what Mike Perry is saying. Don't necessarily feel like I need my corner in here for a guy like Mickey Gall. This is a guy I should be able to beat. If I can't, maybe I don't belong here. And I know you didn't listen to my show, I guess, if it was just me. Always be our show in my heart, Jimmy. But I know, I get a little teary-eyed here. I thought Mickey Gall is a victim of, and really the last remaining victim of this, right? Of the UFC forcing things, right? They give him CM Punk. They give him Sage Northcutt. We didn't really know where their talent was. We didn't know where their ceiling was. Okay, then he gets the setback to Randy Brown, the setback to Diego Sanchez. Now you're going to give him Mike Perry. It just seems like he was the benefactor of all these questionable fights. And then now you finally put him in there with somebody that has talent, that has skill. And I know people talked about the ground game, but I said in the show, man, to sit there and say, oh, Cowboy Cerrone's ground game versus, I know belt is belt, right? But I'm not ranking Cowboy Cerrone and Mickey Gall on the same level on the ground. This was a fight where we saw, girlfriend or not, there wasn't a whole lot of corner needed. To his credit, empty arena or not, Mike Perry said he started to understand the corner calls in the third round. And really, I didn't see a moment he was in danger in this fight.
Here's the thing for me, is that whether or not you think Mickey Gall was going to win, you thought Mike Perry was going to win, people were saying, oh my God, how can you pick against Mike Perry? He's 2-5 in his last 7 fights. He's not a great fighter. Obviously going into this by any stretch of the imagination. Yeah, he beat Paul Felder. Paul Felder's a puffed up 155-pounder. Beat Alex Oliveira. I put him in almost the same category. He's not a great fighter by any stretch of imagination. A lot of physical talent. He's incredibly strong. But Mickey Gall just had more ways to win and didn't use any of them. It was a frustrating fight to watch in that 5 takedown attempts in a 15-minute fight against Mike Perry. Like, you should have 5 in the first minute of the first round. Meaning, if you can get him down and put pressure on him, he's not particularly tactical. He's not particularly skilled when it comes to the jiu-jitsu game. Even he would not say he was. 0 submission wins. It's just Mickey Gall hung out on the outside with his hands up, seemed afraid to engage, answered back a little bit, but you're never going to win that battle. If you let Mike Perry initiate the striking exchanges, you're always going to be second, and he's always going to hit harder. So he never even sold out and really put his hips into submission to some takedown attempts. He never really pressed hard to clinch and put Mike Perry up against the fence or anything he could do. It was like he was hanging out, waiting for Mike Perry to make a mistake, and that just never really happened. He never overcommitted and fell down or anything like that, but that's what it seemed like Mickey Gall was waiting for. This was a battle between 2 guys who, if they belong in the UFC, are obviously at the bottom rung. They're just not great fighters. Now, Mike Perry always has a very exciting style. His personality is just off the chart weird. People really enjoy that. So there's a reason for the UFC to keep him around and keep giving him fights where he can have exciting performances for sure. But Mickey Gall, as you said, it's like, well, you got outthought by Mike Perry. You got out game planned by Mike Perry. That says a lot about where you belong in terms of your MMA career. It was a fight between 2 welterweights I don't have a ton of faith in a very stacked division. And it was just frustrating to see Mickey Gall kind of lose for not shooting back. He just didn't seem to have a game plan he could stick to, which is cost him. It's maybe cost him his UFC career.
Yeah, but honestly, when I went back and looked at these fights, I looked at the Diego fight, and I'm right there with you. Like, when you lose to Diego Sanchez, that's where I lose a lot of faith in you. Like it's hard to pick. It's hard to pick you now because of this. So a lot of the things that you just said to discuss how you feel about Mike Perry can also go hand in hand with how people look at Diego Sanchez. Listen, his shots at Diego were nullified too. So he really did have a hard time imposing that game plan. And it's like, I'm not going to take away black belt talent. He legitimately is a skilled mixed martial artist, but whether it's camps, whether it's mental, his translation into fight IQ is just not there.
Horrendous.
And that's not it's not a knock on him. There's a lot of fighters that have that problem, but he doesn't have that intangible, right? He doesn't have that, oh, people will watch Mike Perry. Listen, at the end of the day, fighting or not, there's a lot of this is entertainment. We can't have every fight be the main event, okay? So to me, I kind of like that entertainment that, Diego and Mike Perry bring. Maybe not Diego. Diego's little going off the deep end, but I can appreciate that. It brings a value to the sport beyond just fighting. I know some people really hate that comment or that thought process and feel that every fight should be, the two most pure athletes in the world going against each other. But the reality is there ain't that many athletes in the world that are signing up to kick and punch each other in the face. So I need the Mike Perrys there. And, I really feel like whoever lost this fight probably cashing your ticket out. And I have to say, I probably think Mickey Gall needs that at this point. He needs to go down to, dare I say, Bellator, dare I say, PFL, get some confidence, right? Get some confidence, get some game plans against lesser opponents, and then maybe come back. Like we saw with Julian Erosa, last second comeback, call up, okay, this is just not worked out. And to his credit, a lot of it, I feel, is at the hands of the UFC. They were using him as a pawn in this game for, CM Punk, and this is the end result. You get a guy that's not ready.
Yeah, but in another sense, like you had the softballs, right? You had your practice.
Were they? But were they softballs? We don't know. Like
CM
when
Punk,
he was fighting CM Punk. Right.
CM Punk.
But you're talking about
CM
now.
Punk.
But you're talking about now.
Oh, my God.
You're talking about now.
Oh, give me a break. Did you ever think CM Punk was a legit mixed martial artist?
No, but I'm saying the fight against him, Sage Northcutt, before that, with remember, not the Mike Jackson, but cameraman Mike Jackson, these were, yes, to your point, absolutely softballs.
Yes.
But they were building this man's confidence with UFC fights that weren't UFC caliber fights. And now you've got this guy full of himself.
Yeah,
and this is the result when you get in there with somebody that belongs there. This is what happens.
Fringe belongs there. This is not a contender. This is not a world beater. This is not a guy who's going to be on the outside looking in at a title shot eventually. Mike Perry's Mike Perry. So that's the interesting too, is when you go, oh, look, somebody who belongs there. Barely. Mike Perry doesn't have the skill level to beat a lot of guys. Once again, 2-5 in his last 7 fights going into the fight. It's one of those things where also, if you look at, even on that same card, like a Brendan Allen, for example, who, as I said, put 3 together. His first 2 fights, Kevin Holland, Tom Breeze, decent mid-level guys, and he beat them, right? Would you rather have, hey, you're going to be in the middle with all these other guys, and cream's got to rise to the top, to quote Macho Man Savage. Okay, so would you rather be that guy, or we're going to give you these big name softballs? CM Punk and Sage Northcutt can make you look pretty good. Make the most out of that, and he couldn't. What situation would you rather be in? You know what I mean? Like, if you had put him in the middle and said, okay, work your way up, we wouldn't know who Mickey Gall is. We wouldn't.
Right, but he wouldn't be here. He probably wouldn't be here co-main eventing either.
Yeah, what's worse? I don't think he would have been lost in the middle and done by now, probably. Right? I don't think he gets past a stacked 170-pound division if we just put him in the middle. So it's kind of like he got a boost up and still didn't make the jump. He got a head start and couldn't finish the race. So that's, yeah. So there are 2 sides to that coin. There's your side, which is maybe if he had to do that, he'd be a better fighter by this point, right? And my point is, dude, he had the perfect opportunity to get a big name and build his skills waiting for the big boys, and it didn't happen. So, yeah, I mean, there are 2 sides of the same coin.
You spotted him the C and the A, and he still couldn't spell cat.
Exactly. Here's Sage Northcutt. Here's CM Punk. You know what I mean? And You beat them both. You better be ready for the bigger names later because fans now know who you are.
All right. Well, fans definitely know if they didn't before. And I preface this, I was so glad. This was a UFC Fight Night card. I said, this is one that will make believers, make fans. And sure enough, these two guys went out and proved me right. Dustin Poirier, Dan Hooker. Listen, high level guys on, all fronts. But I'm telling you, sometimes it's fun to just watch two guys see how much they can take. And I don't know how these guys continued to absorb and take damage, but it was just one of the craziest, most entertaining, high level at times. Other times, just we're going to stand here and brawl fights I've seen in a long time. I know MMA is a game of short memories, but I don't know how this isn't fight of the year unless we really get something nutty, which we don't even deserve at this point because the MMA gods gave us a massive gift for all the wrongs, Jimmy. All the wrongs of this year, this to me was the payoff. This was an incredible fight that will probably stand the test of time as one of the top 50, if not 25 fights in UFC history for a long time to come.
Yeah, it was a great fight. And what was so interesting, I picked Hooker to win this just because I thought he would kind of have the movement. I thought he would have the accuracy. I thought Poirier might have a down performance after losing to Khabib. Statistically, it's hard to get to the top and then lose. And then a lot of times there's a down in the next fight, right? Poirier did not have that. But the thing to me that was interesting is even when I thought Dan Hooker was winning, those first 2 rounds, almost everybody gave to Dan Hooker. I think if there were 10 seconds more in the second round, he knocks him out. He had him dead to rights at the end and just, ran out of time. It was still a Dustin Poirier kind of fight. It was still. Are you an old school boxing fan?
A little bit. I mean, I do appreciate the sentiment you're going for.
Right, but like Julio Cesar Chavez, Paul Williams, who was a welterweight who would throw like 150 punches around. Even if you won early rounds, you can't keep up with their pace. Chavez just put too much. You can win the first 5-6 rounds against Julio Cesar. You'll eventually break down. He just puts too much pressure. Unless you find a way around that pressure, it's not going to go away. And even when he was winning rounds, the first 2, I was like, this is still a Dustin Poirier kind of fight, where Hooker was like, Jesus, what's it going to take to get this guy off me? That was the first 2, where it was set at a pace that Hooker just wasn't comfortable with. Secondly, Hooker couldn't find the power or generate the power to really hurt Poirier when it counted. I know he hurt him at the end of the second round, but there was a thing with before my piece on ESPN a couple days ago, there was a quote from Chael Sonnen on there, and he talked about there was a time when Dan Hooker hit him with a 10-punch combination, and I said, well, but he didn't drop him. You hit a guy with 10 punches, you don't drop him? He's not going away. And it seemed like Hooker couldn't ever generate. He's had knockouts before, of course. Gilbert Burns probably the best one, and he couldn't generate that stopping power to keep an aggressive Dustin Poirier off of him. He didn't ever hit that one shot that was like, oh man, that's a big one. Poirier's in big trouble. Even when you had him hurt at the end of round 2, it was a lot of punches to get him there. So that was another thing is he couldn't keep up with the pace, and he couldn't land that get off me shot. He was looking for it the whole night, could never find it.
That's so interesting because, in doing the show without you, I had to put my Jimmy Smith hat on and ask myself, what do I feel after 100 shows with Jimmy he would look at? And one of the things I thought was not the fall off after the Khabib fight, but rather, does Dustin lose to only elite guys? Now, granted, you got Conor McGregor back there, so for all the Conor fans, technically, I guess in a way I'm saying elite. Michael Johnson, listen, I don't know how that happened, but we'll go past that. I didn't see Dan Hooker at that same level. I certainly didn't look at a guy that's beat Gaethje, Alvarez, Max Holloway, Pettis, good Pettis, by the way. I just didn't see Dan Hooker putting it together, especially when you go back and look, Edson Barbosa, Jason Knight. Yeah, Jason Knight. You wanted to talk about guys that don't belong. To me, I just did not see Dan Hooker fighting to that level. So in a way, this was a fight where both guys' stock goes up exponentially. I would love to see this fight again at some point, but I know we've got to have guys move on to better things. I just didn't see Dan Hooker making that leap. I get it. Ali Quinta, Paul Felder, I mean, James Vick, like, to me, it just, the trajectories were not equal. Losing to Khabib is, literally losing to the best in the world. So, and I don't think a lot of people gave him a shot. I certainly didn't give him a shot to win that fight. But I definitely, learned a lot from him with Max, with Gaethje, with Alvarez. So it's really interesting to see how his career has turned back from the Conor McGregor loss. To me, like, a lot of people got pushed back on those, but he's kind of been completely against that and really put himself as one of the top fighters in the whole UFC, not just the division at this point.
Yeah, I mean, he really is. The issue moving forward is he's locked in that third spot. If Justin Gaethje beats Khabib, he has a legitimate case that I should be the next one in line. I beat Gaethje before, I can do it again. He can beat that drum. He just became, in my opinion, the biggest Justin Gaethje fan on the planet. Because if Khabib wins, there's not a lot of call for another fight between Poirier and Khabib. Khabib just, was the superior fighter when they met. So, right.
Agreed.
So if Gaethje wins, he has a case. If he doesn't win, he's got to stay busy, as they say, by fighting another murderer in the top 10 and at 155. Oh my God. That's what you get Tony Ferguson. That's an easy out. No. So, yeah. Right. So he's kind of hoping that Justin Gaethje wins and he goes right into that title shot. If not, he's got at least one more before anyone buys him beating Khabib. And good luck putting that together in this division. Oh my God, it's Shark Tank. So Hooker took a big step back simply because he has to climb further now than Poirier does. Charles Oliveira, good luck. Not that he can't beat Oliveira. It's like, oh my God, I mean, that guy's number 7 and he's an absolute monster. You want to rematch? Paul Felder getting on Twitter saying, oh, he'll come back for either guy. Jesus Christ, it was 5-round war last time. You want to go through that again? It's like you get knocked down one rung at 155 and it's like going down a mile in any other division.
Yeah, but do you blame him? I mean, if I was Paul Felder, I'd be saying the same thing too. As you said, essentially what Dustin Poirier has become by process of elimination is just a rung on the ladder. He has another prove-it fight, but also whoever he fights has the ability to take everything he's building back to with one win. So, he really is in the next fight is a lose-lose situation. No matter what, you're either going to lose what you've built by coming back and going through this war, or, you're going to have 5 more years, possibly taken off your life. I mean, fights like that literally take years off people's lives. Yeah. I don't think a lot of people fully understand that. That's easy 2 years off somebody's lifespan, going through a war like that you physically may never recover from. I mean, both of these guys literally got just pounded on for 25 straight minutes. There was maybe a combined 6 minutes of stalling in that fight. And most of that was just, ground and pound or at least transitions.
Yeah. It's craziness. It's like, even though you won, you're still, as you said, in kind of a lose-lose situation. It's just so log-jammed at the top. And also, Conor McGregor cuts the line whenever he feels like it. It's almost like it's better to be seen as, I don't want to say an easy mark, but a mark for Conor McGregor than it is to be a contender. Because you'll make more money, right? And what are you going to wait around for your title shot? Jesus Christ. I mean, it's a tough place to be toward the top of 55,
Yeah, no, but hey, that he knew what that division was when he signed up for it. It's historically been one of the more consistent divisions that the UFC has. It's never been an easy walk,
but with a great champion this time. Now, that's an interesting thing, and I know we're going a little long here, but one thing about 155 is it's the one division. And I would say Khabib is it now. But if you look at every other division in the UFC, there is a standalone, obvious number 1 of all time. In every division. 25 it's DJ, 35 is Dominic Cruz, 45 is Jose Aldo, 70 is GSP, 85 is Anderson Silva, 205 is John Jones, heavyweight Stipe. Like, not even a lot of debate. There may be 1 or 2 people. All right, Henry Cejudo at 35, maybe you can make that argument. Conor McGregor at 45, some people will make that argument. I will not. Holloway at 45, I would not accept that argument. I think Jose Aldo is clearly the number one guy at 45. 55 has been so tough that there hasn't been that one champion that's had that run that blew everybody else away. BJ Penn, you could argue, was the most talented, but him always moving to 170, the division disappeared for a while. He couldn't have that run that all your other, Mount Rushmore guys have. So what's different now is you have the stacked division you've always had at 55, but you have this monster champion at the top where it's hard to figure out a way around that guy. So it's a really interesting set of circumstances.
Right. And I mean, with Khabib, like you said, one of the things that interests me the most is you mentioned John Jones. You've seen, or we want to project that we've seen kind of the fall off. You haven't seen that with Khabib. We haven't seen any sign of weakness or slowing down or, I don't know, maybe he's lost one round, during his
Connor's
past
second round?
five fights?
The Connor fight? I think the second round to Connor.
Yeah.
I think, if I remember correctly. I think Connor won one round against Khabib. And that's about it.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, you're not just fighting him. You're fighting the myth that precedes him, because everyone knows. So you're right. It's one of the biggest talking points in this division. And as you mentioned, yes, we went a little long, but we missed a couple shows. We appreciate you guys sticking through with us anyway. We will be back in the week with more commentary.